Last year, there were a ton of underrated transfers. Hendon Hooker's career was coming to an end in Virginia Tech, so he decided to transfer to Tennessee. While he didn't start the entire season, he had one of the best single seasons for a quarterback in Tennessee football history, and he has set himself up for a Heisman-worthy campaign going into 2022. Jameson Williams was the fourth-string receiver at Ohio State, and he became an afterthought to Buckeyes fans. What did he do? He transferred to Alabama, who is in desperate need of a veteran receiver, and combining his natural skill set with a void in the Crimson Tide offense, Williams became a top 3 receiver in the game and became a first-round pick. The last guy I want to highlight is Kenneth Walker. He was productive at Wake Forest, but the Demon Deacons don't get a lot of media attention, and Walker wanted to play on a bigger stage and have a fresh start. He decided to transfer to Mel Tucker at Michigan State, where he won the starting running back job and became a Heisman contender. Those 3 guys, though, were not the biggest names in the transfer portal. They weren't these 5-star headline-breaking commitments, but they ended up becoming superstars. In today's video, I want to talk about some other guys who could have similar impacts, talk about who they are and what kind of impact they could have at their next school. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and talk about some underrated transfers. So the first guy I want to talk about is Jalen Robinson. If you're an Oklahoma or a UCF fan, you are more than familiar with Robinson. Coming out of the state of Texas, Robinson caught over 100 passes for 1,400 yards and 18 touchdowns during his pretty storied Texas career. Because of that, he was a highly ranked player and was actually so good that he decided to commit to Oklahoma. While he was only a 3-star athlete, he was going to have a chance to make an impact for the Sooners. Unfortunately, in 2018, he did not get much of a chance to play. He only caught 3 passes for 28 yards in his Sooner career, and because of that, he decided to enter the portal. Where did he sign on to? Well, he went to UCF. UCF was a rising program, and they had a great young quarterback in Dillon Gabriel. Robinson had sat out the 2019 campaign, and immediately he showed out in 2020. He became the team's top receiver as he caught 55 passes for 979 yards and 6 touchdowns. He obviously became Dillon Gabriel's top target and averaged nearly 18 yards per reception. Because of that, there was insane hype for him in 2021, and his numbers went down. He only caught 18 passes for 322 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he was limited due to an injury and a lot of instability at the quarterback position. Because of that, Robinson decided to enter the portal. He could have gone back home to Oklahoma and joined Gabriel, but instead, he's going over to the SEC, where he is now committed to Ole Miss. He became one of the top wide receivers in the portal, and he'll now look to replace Dontario Drummond as the number 1 receiver option down in Oxford. The Rebels do have a quarterback battle between Luke Altmaier and Jackson Dart, but either way, Robinson and Jonathan Mingo will be the 2 most experienced receivers on the roster, and I expect Robinson to blossom into an NFL talent. Will he have the kind of season Jameson Williams had? Probably not, but I'm really pumped to see what he's going to do. Up next, we have a running back in Nathaniel Pete. This guy is now going over to Missouri, and if you're a fan of the Tigers, you know they've had some pretty good running backs over the last few years. It started with Demarie Crockett, then it was Larry Roundtree, and most recently Tyler Beatty. Beatty made SEC history last year as he became the 4th player to have over 4 200-plus yard games in their career. This was pretty insane, and now there are very high expectations when it comes to replacing Beatty at that spot. Who did they end up getting? Well, they grabbed a guy by the name of Nathaniel Pete from Stanford. Coming out of high school, Pete grew up in Mizzou's backyard. He went to Rockbridge High School, which is literally located in Columbia, Missouri. So you're asking, how did they let this kid slip away? Well, they never made him a priority, which looked really stupid. As a junior, he ran for over 1,500 yards and 16 touchdowns, and then as a senior, he ran for 2,529 yards and 24 touchdowns. He left as the high school's all-time leading rusher, and according to 24/7 Sports, he was the 5th best all-purpose back. That does not mean he was the 5th best running back, as he was only considered a 3-star prospect, but he decided to go out of state and went over to Stanford. This guy was a productive, athletic player who played running back, receiver, and on special teams. Pete did not do a whole lot in his Stanford career, though. Maybe you can blame it on the fact that Stanford wasn't that good over the last few years, but Pete only had about 700 yards rushing with 4 touchdowns in 3 years, and his best impact was on special team. After the season, he decided to transfer back home, where he is more than likely going to be the starting running back for Missouri. He's a guy who loves the school, has a lot of athletic potential, and the system is built for him, so I think Pete could become an 1,000-yard rusher and carry the torch that the last 3 running backs have held. I could be dead wrong, but I'm not too happy with Missouri's quarterback situation, so the Tigers might lean on their ground game a little bit more, and if that's the case, Pete could be one of the most underrated transfers in the market. Beau Nix is an Auburn legend. His dad played quarterback there, so when Beau became a 5-star, he had nowhere else to go except Auburn. Nix made history as he started right away and led the Tigers to thrilling wins over both Oregon and Alabama amongst others. Nix had a great freshman season in which he threw for 2,500 yards and had 23 combined touchdowns. Because of that, he was the SEC Freshman of the Year and was seen as one of the future players of the game. Instead, he regressed in 2020 and 2021 as his numbers just weren't that great. He both stagnated and regressed in those 2 years, and there was many times where he made a lot of questionable decisions. Because of that, after the 2021 season, Nix decided he was going to leave Auburn. This was unthinkable to a lot of people, as there was just no way a guy like him could leave. But it did happen, and many schools pursued him. A few weeks after he entered the portal, he announced that he was going over to Oregon. Oregon had lost their starting quarterback in Anthony Brown to the NFL, so Nix was going to be throwing himself into a situation in which he was not guaranteed the job. He'd have to battle it out with both Ty Thompson and Jay Butterfield, who likely had a higher ceiling than him. Nix, though, has shown he's going to be a force at Oregon. He played great in the spring game, and right now, it seems he's the #1 option for this Oregon team. New head coach Dan Lanning is very excited with what Nix can do, and we're going to get a chance to see what he can do in week 1. He'll play against Kirby Smart and Georgia in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game, and we'll get to see Nix's skill set on full display. He will have to figure out his main options at the receiver spot, but there's a lot of talent here. The schedule isn't too difficult, and I think Nix could end up proving a lot of people wrong and saving his reputation and career. The next guy we're going to talk about is another running back. His name is Kobe Lewis. Coming out of Americus, Georgia, Lewis was a 0-star recruit and was not ranked on any platform. He rushed for 1,700 yards as a senior, but that only led to a scholarship offer to Central Michigan. Lewis would happily accept that scholarship and would appear in all 12 games as a freshman, but only ran for 37 yards. 2019 would be his big year. He'd play in all 13 games as he rushed for 1,074 yards, had 12 touchdowns, and averaged nearly 6 yards per carry. He also returned kicks and became one of the top running backs in the MAC. Because of that, he had a ton of hype going into 2020, and after starting 6 games, he led the team in touchdowns and points. Lewis was one of the most underrated running backs in the country, but he'd end up missing the entire 2021 campaign, and instead, Lew Nichols would take over. Little did anyone know that statistically, Nichols would become the best running back in the country, and this basically shut the door on Lewis. He decided to enter the portal, and he's now found a Big Ten school that desperately needs a starting running back. Purdue has not had any stability at the running back position in years, and Lewis decided he was going to go there. The Boilermakers are a sleeper team to win the Big Ten West right now, and many think that Lewis could be the starter and add a whole new element that the Boilermakers have been lacking. If Lewis can get back to his 2019 form, then he can be that guy that the Boilermakers have been desperately searching for, and this could also be one of the top backs in the Big Ten. We're going to have to wait and see, but this is a guy to keep an eye on. The last player we're going to talk about in today's video is another dude who transferred from a small school and was not ranked coming out of high school. His name is Antoine Wells. This is a name that you need to know for the 2022 season, as he's going to be a star receiver for South Carolina. But going back in time, this did not look like it'd be the case for Wells. He went to Highland Springs High School in Virginia and finished his senior season with 36 catches for 880 yards and 12 touchdowns. Based on that stat line, you could tell that he was a big play kind of player. He gained very little FBS interest as he eventually decided to commit to James Madison. Yes, James Madison is now an FBS school, but back then they weren't. Wells would finally play in 2020 as he caught 33 passes for 603 yards and 6 touchdowns, while averaging over 18 yards per reception. This was his breakout season, and 2021 would be when he put it all together. With the team, he finished with 83 catches for 1,250 yards and 15 touchdowns. Despite nearly doubling his production, his average yards per catch was still at 15, and he became one of the top players in FCS football. In just 2 seasons, he's in the top 10 in many JMU statistical categories, and because of that, he was highly sought after when he entered the portal. He decided he was going to go down to South Carolina and play for Coach Shane Beamer. South Carolina has a ton of exciting weapons for the 2022 season, and Wells is just one of them. They have a tight end by the name of Jaheim Bell, who could likely be a first-round pick, and then they return Josh Vann, who's been productive for the last few years. Combining those two with the talent of Wells, South Carolina has a chance to have one of the most explosive offenses in the country, and if Wells' talent can translate from JMU to South Carolina, then he could be an 1,000-yard receiver and hear his name called in the 2023 NFL Draft. Recently, he's been getting a ton of hype, and I have bought into it, and I'm super pumped to see what Wells is going to do this year. But we're going to have to wait and see what happens. So yeah, in today's video, we highlighted 5 underrated transfers who can make a huge impact at their next school, and I definitely want to do more of this series, so if you enjoyed it, please let me know down below. Who is your favorite transfer? Who is an underrated transfer I can take a look at next? And what topic should I do next? Be sure to let me know down below. Smash that like button if you want to support today's video. Subscribe if you are new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.